Today I'm talking with Kara M. Zone, author of Cinders Burn at Midnight. This is the first book in what she envisions as a 12-book series of trilogies. We talk about how and why she got into writing, her unique magic system that dictates how siblings get powers within a family, as well as some of the more funny, lighthearted scenes in a deeper book around some pretty heavy abuse. As always, this episode does include spoilers, so I highly recommend that you read the book first and then come back and watch the episode. Welcome to Busy Reading Romantasy, a video podcast that discusses books that merge elements of romance and fantasy while occasionally exploring other genres. We get to escape our world and dive deep into themes of good versus evil, power dynamics, and all of the delicious taboo topics. Curiosity and open-mindedness are a must. That being said, this is a podcast for mature audiences only and will contain spoilers. Your mental health matters, so be sure to check the trigger warnings of each book to decide if this is the right episode for you to listen to. Now, let's get into today's episode. Originally from Seattle. So
oh, wow.
Across.
Big difference, too.
Big difference. I love the Pacific Northwest. I think it's beautiful and somewhat similar. I just always felt like I didn't really belong. I like to say Florida, like the heat kind of does something funky to people's brains, and there's like a little special brand of craziness down here, and I'm like, yeah, I like this.
That's good.
That's where I feel like I belong. But awesome. What's the weather like up there right now?
Today is great. I had my window open actually, and I was like, I probably should close it for this, but it's about 60 and
that is nice.
The sun is shining. There's like no clouds. So tomorrow it'll be like 30. So Ohio.
Yeah, that is crazy. we get swings, but we're pretty much into like spring now. Warmth, so.
Are you on the panhandle or are you like?
I'm in Central Florida, so just south of like Tampa.
Okay. That sounds good. My husband has family that lives down there. His grandmother lived down there for years, and he's like every day at 12 o'clock it rains or 2 o'clock. I forget what he says. So, but I don't think you're in that area. So
we more in usually between June and July. That's where we get the like every day at the same time. It'll rain for like 20 minutes, and then that's it for the day.
Yeah. Well, wow. You had it rough this summer though too, right? There were like 2 or 3 hurricanes that hit, and they all came up from the Gulf.
Yeah, we had a dead hit. This was the first time in all my years living here that we had a dead hit. We had evacuated. Yeah. This was my first time as a homeowner, and I was like, I'm coming back to nothing. I've lost my house. I've lost everything, which is a crazy thing to, I think, consider. But we actually got very lucky and had very minimal damage. Thankfully, my house is made out of like concrete, so we were very lucky. But it was a lot to deal with. I actually had just gone to Romantasy Con in Orlando. And the day that I drove back, so it's only 2 hours away from me. The day that I drove back, I had like 2 hours to pack up, and then we left. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Time.
And it is. I actually wound up at a convention myself in North Carolina right after that one hit, and they it like took out that one town. I can't even remember, and I feel awful. But we had people from that area, and they had just so happened to be out of it, out of the area. They came back, their husband, their kids, everybody was still in there. And she's like, I didn't get to see my kids for so long. I just, we have tornadoes here and stuff, and we have awful snow. I know every area has a different kind of, thing, but I think hurricanes would be an extra layer of suck.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, I feel like I've been through enough now. Like, we've only ever evacuated for 3 total, my whole life. And the more I've seen it, the more I'm like, okay, like I know kind of the things to look for. We're not in a flood zone, thankfully, or we're in the like very last flood zone, so that's not as much of an issue. I just paid like $6,000 for hurricane shutters. Like I
Yeah.
wanted to get those because we have big windows, and I've gotten a little bit used to it, and I think Florida's been really good at like responding to that and being ready for it. Like now we get text messages from like the power company. They can give us an estimate of when it'll come back. Like it's a pretty efficient system compared to when I was younger. If something happened, it was just like nobody really knew what was going on. So
I remember those days.
yeah. But at the same time, when like also living up in the north where like you watch the TV to wait to see if like school's been canceled or anything, like you know, all that kind of stuff. But
well, yeah, and I mean this is probably, we don't have to keep talking about this if you don't want
no, you're
to.
all good.
Like when I was in school, like we never got caught off snow either. Like never. It had to be like 8 feet of snow. You know, can't even, you know, drive on the road because it's complete ice. And now my kids, well, they're adults. They're older. They're 21 and 19, but they missed like a whole month one year. It wasn't like bad snow. It was just kind of like when you're in North Carolina and it snows and then they shut everything down and you're like, huh?
Yeah.
So they're very different with all kinds of stuff now. So
yeah. No, that's true. It's interesting. And I think it's always just interesting to see what life is like for you know, people around, because I have been in Florida long enough that I do forget, like I started my garden at the beginning of February. And so so when I hear other people are still dealing with snow, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It is. I'm part of this writing community also, and we had a lot of people in Florida there. And the one day, someone posted a picture of themselves in a parka, and she was like, "It's 40 degrees here," and we were all like, "I still don't use this jacket when it's 40."
Yep. My dad is actually, he lives in Alaska,
Oh,
so even
wow.
further.
Yeah.
And he's the one that I text because to him he'll be like, "Oh my gosh, it's actually so warm today," and it's like 40s, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, that's you know, I same. It dropped a little bit ago, and I was cold in the morning, so I put on like sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and I like checked, and it was like maybe 60 outside, and I was like, oh, it's a cold, chilly day."
Yeah.
But yeah.
We had,
So
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you're fine. We could talk about weather all day long.
I'm sure we could.
Our stories. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. I would love to know, were you a big reader growing up?
I was. I was a little bit more of, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s.
Mhm.
You know, so we had very different rules about that stuff. YA didn't exist. New
Gotcha.
adult didn't exist. So Stephen King, VC Andrews. My first favorite novel was In a Dark, Dark Room, which is like got all these really crazy short stories. And my favorite story in like second grade was when the girl's head fell off. So, and so read a lot of dark stuff. And then I read like Babysitter's Club and Sleepover Friends. Like I was like, yes, both ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah. Oh.
And then I liked Star Trek, so I read a lot of Star Trek novels as well.
Yeah. What a mix. That's so funny. That actually reminded me. I in kindergarten, I remember they would read scary stories to tell in the dark or something like that. No, I was part of the group that had to go to the other classroom because I was like, I can't participate in this. I was a little scaredy cat, but it's so funny because now thinking back, I was like, oh man, there's no way that I think they would ever do any of that.
Right. Like they wouldn't. And you know what? It's so even weird. And this isn't a book related thing, but it's sort of this kind of topic. So one of my favorite movies still to this day is Goonies. I love it.
Yes.
It's there. And I was so excited to show my kids. And my daughter was like 6 and my son was like 8, and they were horrified. I had to turn it off. And I'm just sitting there going, what? And then I'm like, oh no, felons are chasing them. they threatened to cut off a kid's, hand in a blender.
Mhm.
There are skeletons everywhere. Oh, I should have been afraid of this too, probably. So,
Yeah, that also brings to mind Pinocchio because I used to work in childcare and I still nanny now. So usually there's like, a movie, give myself a few hours. And
yeah.
I remember once I was like, we were going through some of the Disney classics and I was like, oh, Pinocchio. And then I was like, oh my gosh, because they're smoking and drinking, calling each other jackasses. And I was like,
Yes.
whoa, it was crazy.
It is. It definitely is. Yeah, lots of swearing in even like PG-13 movies back
Yeah.
then. So, yeah, it's very
Yeah.
different.
Man, how the times changed.
It does.
So, how did you end up getting into writing?
Um, well, I always wanted to be a writer,
Mhm.
and it was just one of those things, like, I didn't have a lot of, self-confidence, grew up in a really complicated and, emotionally charged, household and different things like that. So I just really didn't believe that I was any good. And so I didn't do it for a very I did it. I didn't show anybody. I was very afraid of everything. And I eventually stopped even writing myself, like, because I just was like, this is crap, and I'm never going to be able to be a writer. And I had kids really young. I was 22 when I got pregnant with my son, and then by the time I was 25, I had my daughter. And because I came from the background that I came from, my husband and I were not very nice to each other. It was a very unhealthy situation for him, for me, for my kids. So one morning, which doesn't seem like it's going to be related, but one morning I woke up from a dream and the characters wouldn't stop talking to me. They just wouldn't stop. And it was to the point where I started writing like pen to notebook, because I had to get them to stop talking to me. Um, and I did. And then I wrote hand wrote a 160 word novel in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my wake up call. Um, and even then, I had like people supporting me that I told. And they're like, this is really good. You have to send it to an agent. And I was like, okay, so this is 2008,
Mhm.
2009. So it was very different back then. And I knew I wasn't ready because I needed to get myself in order and to, do those kinds of things. So we did end up separating and divorcing. And then I went to college because I always had wanted to go, and that was something that I was constantly told I couldn't do, and for a myriad of different reasons.
Mhm.
So I did, all with the intention of coming up to writing my book, writing this novel, which was always a 12-book series. It was like a series of trilogies.
Wow,
Uh,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I really started hitting in 2018. I graduated. I was a non-traditional, obviously, student, and then I started really on my path to writing, because with the intention that I would always end up starting to write books, because I had more confidence, and you know, I wanted to. And it's like that core part of yourself, like when you find it, and it's sort of like everything brightens and the light comes on. And I was like, I've been suppressing this for so long.
Yeah.
But it feels good. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, first of all, I'm so glad that you came back to it and
Thank
that
you.
you kept going towards the very beginning when you said that. I think something along the lines of like you were scared of everything. I felt that.
Yeah.
I have an extensive history with anxiety and also, not the most ideal childhood, and so just recognizing kind of overcoming things like that, and it very much becomes part of your story. And it's so cool how it happened too, where it's just like it when you said you woke up and you just had to start writing, and that was how it went.
Yeah. Um Yeah, well, and I think that that's why, like, mental health and complex PTSD is such a huge theme, and it's going to continue to be a theme in my novels because we all do have some kind of something. Like, I have anxiety, I have
Mhm.
complex PTSD, and I have
Mhm.
a chronic pain disorder because of the chronic PTSD. And people need to talk about it. Like, you just start talking, and even though it might not necessarily go away, but you never know who you're going to inspire or talk to or help feel better because that helps them know that they're not being alone.
Yeah.
That sounds funny.
Yes, absolutely. No, I get what you mean,
Okay.
and I would love to come back to that when we talk about Cinders Burn at Midnight specifically. But
Thanks.
before we hop into that, I would like to know more about what was the writing process like for you specifically when it came to Cinders Burn at Midnight.
um so like I said, I started handwriting it
Hmm.
15 years ago,
Hmm.
2008, 2009 ish.
Yeah.
And I had no flippin' clue about anything. Like, I knew I wrote a book and I had no idea about any of it. And so I went on to the internet, which is very different in 2010 than it is now.
Correct.
And I started looking for writing forums to like make myself like hone it.
Yeah.
And again, it was very different then. And while I understand that there are still, people with malintent online, it was much more prevalent out in the open back then. I just think because we didn't know any better, you know what I mean?
Right.
Um, and so I had to, I ended a marriage and I wanted to go to college. So I had that whole huge break. So these characters like had time to percolate.
Mm.
And at the end of 2023, I was like, okay, it's my time for my book. I did ghostwriting for a while. I had like USA Today bestsellers telling the clients that this is like one of the best books that they'd read all year. And I'm like, well, what the hell am I waiting for? Right? Like, these are people that, yes, I'm writing for it. I am ghostwriting, but they know what
Mhm.
they're talking about. So it
Mhm.
was my time. So I started writing it in September of 2023. I finished writing it about January 2024, sent it off to betas, who were my cousin and a couple of friends. And one of my friends, I asked her to read it, and she does not read dark, scary horror stuff at all. But I was curious as like how far could I push that audience? Um,
Right.
she didn't like it. And I was like, that's okay. I didn't expect you to, but
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
But she said the writing was really good. It just wasn't her story. And
Right.
I totally get that.
Mhm.
So then I was like, all right, I knew a lot about indie publishing because I um, did it from 2019 on to 2023. And I was like, all right, well, I will shop it around for a few minutes, but no matter what, I'm going to get it published in 2024.
Mhm.
Which didn't happen, but I have a story with it. And I did find this hybrid publisher, and it seemed really cool. They had like a 30,000 people audience, and like I knew how hard it was to do indie publishing. I had talked to a couple of traditional publishers that were smaller, and they liked the book, but they didn't know what to do with it, which I totally understand. Like, one was a cozy, witchy um, midlife um, publisher, and she wanted to see
Mhm.
my manuscript, and I was like, but do you?
Yeah. Are
Do
you
you really?
sure?
And it turned out the way that I thought, but it was really
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah.
And I did, so I started working with this hybrid, and while I understand what they were doing, they were not for me. They had
Mhm.
a very specific, and I hate to say rigid, but as what I've seen in indie publishing versus what I know has to happen, um, my experience was a little too rigid.
Mhm.
So I did end up leaving them, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna do it myself. And while that was going on, I had a couple agents reject me and stuff, but my heart wasn't in like querying and doing all of those things. But I did have and she's a developmental editor and she's incredible, but she was only doing like manuscript reviews. So I had her help me really hone it. And in that process, I had written it maybe 2.5 times at that point. And so she walked me through a lot of really, really interesting things. And we, probably by July, I had it pretty much dialed in, and I got a cover designer and I got a copy editor, and I didn't take it to the betas again because I was like, well, she was doing such a great job as a reviewer that I don't really think I needed another beta with that. But betas are very important, especially for first drafts, I think, because they really point out a lot of stuff. So I finished writing it by July with the intent of it getting published in January 2025. My original was October, but the way that the publisher the hybrid wanted to do things, it ended up pushing it back because of how you have to talk about yourself online so you can get visible, so you can make sure that you see people. Like I knew all of that stuff and I just wanted a cover, and they're like, you don't get a cover, we don't do a cover for you until this stage. And I'm like, well, that's not really how it works. So
Gotcha.
yeah, and again, their process works for other people, so it's not like I'm even disparaging them what they know and what they do, but it just wasn't my way. So yeah, then got a cover designer. Am I going too far into like
No.
the whole process? Okay.
No, you have to. I'm
And
still very much learning the whole publishing process, so I find it fascinating. So please keep going.
thank you. Yeah, I know a lot, and I definitely want to always share my information with people too if they want more.
Absolutely.
I love doing that because I don't want people to give up because it's such a hard thing. It's just any way you slice it.
Yeah.
Writing your novel, everything is an incredible. It's incredibly difficult. But
Yeah.
I got the cover designer. I started on Instagram in July, like really hardcore. I again hadn't been on internet or social media because I was on the internet, but since 2010. And again, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
I don't even think Instagram was a thing at that point. I think Twitter was just becoming a thing. So I took a master class in Instagram because I had seen all of my ghostwriting clients just give up. They weren't taught how to make themselves visible. And anytime the conversation of becoming visible came up, they didn't want to pivot into social media. They didn't want to do that. And so a lot of people think I put my book online, it should sell. And that's just not the way that it works. 11,000 books are published every day. 11,000.
Wow.
So you have to make yourself visible. So I decided to use Instagram. I took this masterclass. And by August, the end of August, I had I knew you had to get ARCs. So I found out, I kind of threw some spaghetti on the wall with that one and found everything out. And I just really started watching what other authors were doing, how they were marketing themselves, and incorporating it into the social media strategy. And, it's on sale today also.
Ooh.
If it's digital, it's 99 cents, but it won't be in April. So.
Fair. Okay. Sorry, just for the recording today.
Yeah. But yeah, so, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Book 2 will be out in the early summer of 2025, and I'm releasing these novellas out in between, sort of as teasers, and eventually I'll remove them and put them up as a box set and let let people take that too. So
Absolutely. Do you have what was your favorite part of the whole process?
So I had it. I love that question, by the way.
Okay.
I had it in a really, because I had this in, my head for 15 years, I thought that I had it in a really good place. And originally book 2 was going to be book 1 in my mind.
Oh.
Um and so in book 2 she forgets a lot of, like, she doesn't remember anything that went on in book 1. And then when my betas read it and the DE, the developmental editor read it, they were all like, "This is book 2," and I was like, "I know it's book 2. I have a plan." So I didn't use book 2 as book 1 now. It
Gosh,
is
yeah,
now book
okay.
2. But so I had everything planned out. Like, I already knew because I'd already written it, a million times over, with my pens and notebooks. The coolest thing about letting things simmer or listening to other people's critiques and all of that stuff is that the story really comes together in a new and fascinating way. And I got to know my characters so much more with this last draft. I got to see their little quirks. I got to learn about the story, and while the big plot points are still the same, the way that they connected with each other and the storyline and all of those things got rooted more. And it was a great stage. The father, who's estranged in the novel, is he ends up calling like his kids, I forget what he calls Max at this point, but he called him something. And he calls Caitlin Lightning Bug. And that did not come in until the very last, like, doing editorial copy editing revisions
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
So, and I was like, that's something that I would have missed if I wouldn't have gone through that process. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really enjoy just uncovering those little tiny nuggets.
That's so fascinating, and that has been one of my favorite parts. I always say that, like, pre-podcast, I was a very go with the flow reader. Like, I would read it, it would go in one ear, out the other, like it was just gone. And now looking at them maybe slightly more analytical, just in the sense of, like, I would like something to discuss. I can't just show up and be like, yeah, it was great. But that is one of my favorite parts of books, is those little things that make you feel like you really know this person. Like, this person is, real.
Yeah. And it laid down such a good foundation for the entire world that not only am I going to have this series of trilogies, but all of these side characters are starting to pop up and tell me their stories too. And it's just lacing together so beautifully.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. But the world and writing the world is becoming more fluid. And so it's just a really cool process.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's great to hear. So we've kind of teased at it a little bit, but I would love to know, can you give kind of a, like, spoiler-free synopsis, little teaser of Cinders Burn at Midnight for anyone who maybe hasn't read it?
Yes. Synopses synopsis and blurbs are like the worst thing. We just had this conversation in one of my writing groups. They're like, "Why is it so hard?" I'm like, "'Cause you know too many details."
Yes, that's quickly become maybe not favorite, but I've started paying attention to authors' reactions when I ask that, and I'm like, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I'm sure you'll do great.
Thank you. It really is. So I know we touched a little bit about, it's really about mental health and all of those things, deep underneath. It really is about Caitlin, and she's been in this neglected / abused, toxic relationship with her mother, controlling everything, every moment. And if they're not needing her, like they just push her away. And it really is about like the relationships also, while Caitlin is discovering a world of magic and having, just all of this, like she's the chosen one, but that's not really like something that is talked too much in depth about in book one. But so she goes through this whole character arc, and when she's doing that, she's mending a relationship with her brother, who was also estranged, because when you're in a trauma or abusive family, there's a lot of times where people will purposefully pit other people against each other because they will. I don't even, I don't remember. It's called something and I can't remember it right off the top of my head. So that relationship develops throughout this novel. And if I'm talking too much, I don't, just let me know. I do. But there's a third relationship in the that's very prominent, and it's a dual POV. So it's hers, and then it's Finn Avery's, and Finn is Caitlin's brother's best friend, and which makes it so much easier to be like, here's a trope. So that one just lent itself to me. And then it's about their relationship as that develops, and so the number 3 is incredibly significant in this story. And another way, like with the drafting process, I got to go back and make sure that 3 was in every single aspect, as much as I could. But in my world, the eldest child gets 2 powers. That's what they're born with, 2, and then the youngest children are born with 1, but it's bigger, like lightning and fire. It's more active. And then we created, and I say we because my publicist helped me out with the name, the link, the Trium Perfectum. And while it's not technically fated mates, it's that's what everybody's coining it as, because it's easier to understand.
Right.
But everybody who's in my world ends up in a relationship together who are connected like that anyway, so it lends itself to that too. So it's really just the Caitlin coming into independence, real, because that's all she wanted. She wanted to go to college. She wanted independence. And then they discover, that she's being drugged, and then they discover what her mom does, why she's being drugged, and so it's just unlayering the story. So the story of what her past was, and mixes it in with how she's becoming who she's becoming. And
No.
Finn is learning how to not have control over this uncontrollable magic and stuff.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think even the I've been talking about this lately because at the beginning of my reading journey, I was not a fan of multiple POV or even dual POV. I was very much like, give me one character, I'm gonna latch onto them for life. And I think this was done so well in having Finn gave us access to also his twin brother and Max, and they're part of it as well. So like it really did flow very nicely. I never felt like, oh, I don't care what he's up to. Like, let me get back to Caitlin. It was a good, it brought the pieces together in a really good way, I think.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also noted that when you were talking about the powers, I think that was the first time I've ever encountered a system like that as well, where like as you said, the first got 2 and then the rest of the siblings only got 1, but it was more powerful. I'd love to know more why that was a choice or where that came from.
I don't know. Honestly, I want to say that, I mean, and I think that, subconsciously it still plays into the number 3
Yeah.
together, because, and I think that
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I chose to do it that way. Um I also like I watched Charmed a lot. And, the Phoebe always had the non-active power and different things like
Mhm.
that. So I think a lot of that came from just, pop culture at the time, and different things. Um, and I don't know. I love the idea that the magic system balances itself out in a way. Like, if you're going to have 2 powers, you can't do this. And if, you're going to come second, you're going to, do, you get to have the bigger power, but you still don't have 2. So,
Right.
it definitely, that was a really good question, because I really have never found, like,
Yeah.
why that's the way that, my brain worked.
Yeah.
But maybe I did just figure out that it does have to come from the father, though. So that's going to
Oh,
cause problems later, but yeah,
okay. Okay, interesting.
because, it will.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Can't wait to learn more about that. And it's so cool because I think as someone who reads a lot, I was never really a writer. So I find it fascinating just learning the process. And for most people, they're like, well, that's just the way it is. Like that's the way it just is in my head. I'm like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's really cool that things are being so much, talked about more and everything like that, because honestly, I did walk around with people in my head, and they are talking to me all the time, and if they weren't talking, they're like
yeah.
having a dance party in my head. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and that's completely normal, and if you talk to other writers, that's completely normal for them too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's nice to have other people sort of validate, like, hey, this is the healthier version of schizophrenia.
You're right. Fair. And speaking of dance scenes,
Yeah.
the one between Kate and her brother, that's just one part of the book that stood out the most to me. I come from a big dancing background, and I thought that was just so fun. And like we were talking about earlier, it's one of those things where um it builds the characters and our attachment to the characters. It's not necessarily like the plot is not dependent on this at all. Um, did you have any reasons for including that part, or just it was just there?
No, it actually wasn't, and it again came in like the second draft for like 2024. Like, that
Oh,
was
gotcha.
never involved at all.
Yeah.
But and I really didn't think that it was a strong scene, and I thought that my editor was just going to be like, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
But like, the more that I dug into it, it was really like the most bonding moment, besides,
Mhm.
the apartment scene, like, for her and her brother. And it became really just even my heart. You know what I mean? Like, it's just Max let himself go. And if you've heard about the small novella, though, it's Max and Aiden, it's an
Mhm.
accidental fairy tale. Like, you can see how closed off and rigid he is, in a fun way. And it was just like a really, really, it was a good brother sister bonding moment. And I know
Yeah.
that um, people who come from traumatic families and traumatic childhoods, there's something called trauma bonding. And I think that that was sort of a really important scene. So I'm so glad you liked it, because I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing with this scene, but I'm leaving it in. So
Fair. Yes, I know about that part well. My brother, sister, and I have a group chat called Forever Traumatized, and that's that's how we bond. But I like having those moments of lightness and fun, and like you said, to just consider, like, for a second, pause. These are all young adults that are going through some crazy stuff, and to just be like dancing in the living room is such a fun time.
yeah. it was just like sort of a breath, you know?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, we are going to be able to have fun because it's so important, like especially when things are so stressful and stuff, to shut your brain
Yeah.
off. And I'm so glad you liked it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. So this next one is two parts. We'll start with the first part. What was your favorite scene to write?
Oh, I don't know that answer yet. I I don't know if necessarily it was my favorite scene. Any of the scenes where Caitlin is starting to assert herself,
Mhm.
I really, really enjoyed. But I really liked the back and forth between Finn and Caitlin, and I really liked
Mhm.
um, even just the one scene where he yanks her behind, you know, some bushes and stuff. That one was always there. It was always there, and I do love that scene a lot. Uh, but right before that, and again, here's my dark brain.
Mhm.
You know, Jacob comes into the classroom and stuff like that, and I think that that was a really good scene. Also, like I really like enjoyed, you know, getting that tension and
Mhm.
everything there, and using her independence against him, and just even like the teacher, you know, interacting with it. It was just, I think it was a really yeah, I guess it was my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair, fair. Okay. And then on the flip side of that, does anything come to mind that was more challenging to write?
I mean, yeah, on the flip side, it was still pretty difficult to write the relationship between Caitlin and Finn because
Okay.
first draft they were like all in love and there was lust and everything like that. I'm like, well, that's not realistic and that's not a good
Fair.
story and all of that. So their dynamic was pretty complicated. But the scene in the alley with Jacob again, I went back and forth for so many years. Like, I don't even know if I want to do that. It's not, yes, she's asserting herself. Yes, she, you know, gets out of it okay and stuff like that. But it was still, that was a pretty uncomfortable scene. Just being able to go all there and be okay with that when I am just not like, I just, I would never put up with something like that from
Mhm.
like in a real life situation. And I understand the importance of it and I know why I did it, but it was still like it was uncomfortable to write.
Yeah, yeah. I bet. I bet. Um, well, moving on from the uncomfortable bits,
Yay.
um, I made a point to note, how is it like writing humor for you? Because when I say this book made me literally laugh out loud, two parts in particular. The first one is when Cassie they're planning the like group Halloween costume, and she was just like, "Oh yeah, you can be Scooby Doo" to Finn, like hilarious.
Thank
And
you.
then also when Finn and Kate meet Jill and Finn's talking to Kate and like he's like, where do we start? And Jill's like, condoms. Yeah, how does that, is that the same type of thing where it just kind of comes to you as you're writing?
um I do kind of let the characters sort of tell me what they want to do and
Yeah.
where they want to go. I stopped outlining because there was they just do whatever the hell they want anyway. But I have an interesting sense of humor, and I think a lot of that is just from what I've picked up and absorbed from over
Mhm.
the years. You know, Buffy was my one of my favorite shows, and the humor was fantastic, and I watched a lot of really intelligent um comedies, you know, when I was growing up and different things like that. So a lot of it just does come from, you know, my experience and stuff. But I'm so glad you found it funny because I think they're funny, and then I'm like, nobody's gonna think this is just so off the wall and strange. So,
No, the Scooby Doo one got me.
oh, good.
It was
Good.
good.
One of my betas was like, I don't think anybody's gonna know what Scooby-Doo is, if they're like 18 and 20, and I'm like, "Yes, they will. There's so many iterations of Scooby-Doo. It'll be fun."
Yeah,
Um,
classics, you know?
yeah, but Cassie's humor is, like, old, and even in book
Mhm.
2, she's coming up and she's talking about, the movie Clue, and, just she's just constantly doing that, and I think that that's also sort of, um a testament to her character too, because she is like a techie and different things, and I think everybody who is a techie, they have all kinds of strange knowledge in their brain and everything.
Okay, so progressing through that, the cliffhanger ending. Oh my goodness. It went into I was literally like mouth agape. I was like, "Oh, that was it. That was the end." Can you tell us more about so actually today, as we're recording this, you have a novella coming out, and
I
then
do.
after that, anything about book 2?
Sure. You want me to talk about the cliffhanger first or the novella or
Yeah, the cliffhanger and then kind of
Okay.
going into, like, what's
Okay.
next. Yeah.
So again, originally this book was 160,000 words.
Mhm,
And in 2008, with the writing community that I had known, and again, it was very different back then. There was not really a lot of people indie publishing. There was not really even any, I mean, it was a golden ticket of, if you get an agent, then everything will open up. And so, that was all crap too. But everybody told me that I wasn't going to be able to sell a 160,000 word book to anyone. And this was in the era of Twilight coming out and Harry Potter, publishing 900 word books or 900 page books and stuff like that.
mhm.
So I cut it in half. It wasn't always supposed to be on a cliffhanger.
Oh,
It was
okay.
supposed to. So book 2 does not end on a cliff. I don't know if I should even say that or not, but book 2 ends differently.
Okay.
And so yeah, I thought it was a really good place to end it though.
No, it was great 'cause but as a reader, I was like, "Oh my goodness. Yeah, now I need to continue on and find out what happens."
Thank you. I'm glad you like the writing that much. But I did have a reader reach out to me the other day, and she read all three of like she read my novella, she read my both of them, and then because it was free for like permanent ARC and street team
Mhm.
members, they got to see it about 2 weeks ago, and she literally wrote me. She read the novel, and she's like, I basically threw up when I saw the end on it. And I was like, that's the biggest compliment. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, I had a lot of people. I was really surprised. I thought it was obvious. I don't know. It was obvious in my mind. So I figured it was
Yes. I mean, when I figured when she wanted to go back to her place by herself, I was like, "Okay, clearly something is going to happen here." Um, I guess I didn't think exactly how it would play out, where she would just basically end up kind of back to square one, back under control. Um, and yeah, then you're like, now it's even since you spent the whole book with her and getting to know her and seeing her change, and then now kind of I feel like we're all just rooting even harder for her to be
oh,
able to get out
good.
of that situation.
Good. I'm glad. It was definitely a choice.
Mhm,
And I did do it on purpose.
mhm.
So, um, if it would have been published 20 years ago, it would have been 160,000 word books.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
um, but yeah, I don't know.
Perfect.
I kind of thought that, and in storytelling, there's always like the breath of fresh air, right before
Mhm.
something tenses and stuff like that. So I thought that it was pretty appropriate after, what she and Finn shared and all of that stuff, to come in hardcore with a cliffhanger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So then looking next at the novella, can you tell us a little bit about that?
The novella is just how Finn and Aiden's parents met, and it's their origin story and how they connected their Trium Perfectum and everything like that. I've got a lot of really good feedback from that because of the way that I have the world build with the Trium Perfectum, like all of those things. And in the first novella, Max and Aiden stay away from each other because Max is like angry at the world. And when they get back together, not that they were romantically involved at the time they got back together, but when they accidentally bump into each other, like all hell broke loose. And then like with Caitlin and Finn, when they just didn't know what the hell was going on, they connected it accidentally. So the novella right now is it lays the groundwork to give it again that foundation. I wish I had a different word for it, but Philip and Rose knew each other since kindergarten, and they knew that they had this connection. So it's their story. That's the word for that. So it's their just how they grow, and when you're in middle school and high school, things are really shitty. Like you do stupid things, and you wouldn't do. Once you go through them, you learn that lesson and stuff like that. So it's that kind of tale. Like you still get the dual perspective. You get Rose's and you get Philip's, and he's a shifter and he has invisibility just like Finn, but he is in a pack, and that the leader of that pack is pretty cruel. Like he wants to be the leader, and nobody's allowed to do anything else except what he says. And it made for a really interesting story to write because usually my characters are complex. And with Tanner, he was just like, it's mine. And that was it. And I was like, okay, we'll do that. And he's just he's kind of a super dick, but it actually ends up you actually find out what sort of the prophecy is and why people are after Rose and Philip, and why people are why book stuff that's in book 2 is happening. And I don't even know if I should, this is more of a spoiler, so I don't know if I should say it or not, but it introduces like a bigger evil. And it just so happens that again there's 3 of them, and they're like the 3 evil people, and they're fae and everything like that. But and did I do that okay?
Yeah, no, that's great. And that, I think, I wouldn't say spoiler, but it again just kind of grabs my interest more. I'm like, I want to find out. All right, who are these people?
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was really, really, I loved writing Philip and Rose. Like it's a very different book than what I have written before.
Gotcha.
And it's still spicy, but it's like I was so unsure of how to go about that at first, because you meet them in kindergarten and then they like grow up, and I'm like, you still have to do certain things. So you got to get away from that a little bit.
That's fair. Okay. And then now looking on to, before we go to that too, though, you did mention that if you sign up for your newsletter, you can get a free copy of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, and I give it free to ARC members, Street Team members, and newsletter subscribers.
Awesome. Perfect.
And you can't get it anywhere else.
Okay. Supposedly. Good to know. And then looking forward to book 2, is there anything you can tell us about that?
So, sure. But first, it's really cool. So I have a street team, and I couldn't figure out what to name book 2. And I just want to give like a huge shout out to them because they did a really freaking awesome job. I was like, hey, this is my thought process. And originally the books were the first 3 were supposed to be Cinders, Ashes, Remains, just short and sweet. sometime in between then and now, first off, everybody started saying it was a Cinderella story, and I was like, it's not a Cinderella story. Stop calling it
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So that automatically was the first step of me changing the title. But then a novel actually did come out called Cinders, and it is a Cinderella story, except she's a robot, or she has some kind of chip in it. And I was like, okay, so it's not Cinders anymore, which I could have done, but there were other factors.
Right.
And so I explained this to my street team, and I'm like, I don't know what to call it. And everything in fantasy has ashes in it. And I was like, no, I don't want to have ashes in it. There's always ash. And they came up with like 10 different titles together, and then they voted on three. They voted on it. The three highest ones we put out to the public, and we had over like 100 votes, and it is Ashes Fall at Dawn. So, but it was all from the street team and the permanent ARC team. It all came from them, and I was so excited that they were so invested in it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you. But it does have ashes. Like, all right.
The people have spoken.
They did. I was really surprised we got so many votes. I was like, okay, we'll be lucky if we get 5.
Yeah.
But it's really, really cool. So we come back, we see Finn really pissed off and beating himself up. So that's a whole thing he's going to have to get over. Max is very upset because he didn't protect his sister. Caitlin doesn't remember anything, and it all happens on the property of Hallowed Hill Manor, which is Lilith Gilbert's house. And the grandmother is there, and they're doing a Thanksgiving dinner party. And it just so happens that because Jacob did what he did in the end, Lilith was like, yeah, you can have my daughter again. And so he's there a lot more, and he's volatile. I'm almost excited that he's not going to be in any more books after this, to be honest. I don't like Radigan.
Fair.
I get it. I just don't like it. But his dad is there, and then because Philip is because, well, number one, you don't have to read Even After to understand Philip is going to be there. He's a really good father, everything like that. But he's also, Max's surrogate father. So he's coming because he's an adult, even though 21-year-olds are adults, but he knows the business side of things. He understands that kind of stuff. So he's there. And on the back burner, they have to remind Caitlin of who she is and what's happening. And they also have, Cassie's going to be there. Robin's going to be there. Garrick is going to be there, but they're all in. Cassie's not in disguise because they already, knew that. Garrick will be in disguise, different things like that. And then there's this other part on the property with it's a hedge maze and library, hedge maze and library, because there's like, well, in the prologue, that's where Caitlin was in book 1 and Max. And so they spend a lot of time there and in the hedge maze, and then they spend a lot of time in Hallowed Manor, and stuff happens. Gotcha. And a big evil comes, and lots of like I'm so excited about how things are tying together, because novellas were never part of my original plan, and there's so many like little Easter eggs from the novella that you put into the novel, and then from the novel into the novella, and I just love the way that it's laying out too.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's good to hear. And do you have a release date for book 2 yet?
No, not yet. It's going to be early summer. So it'll be early 2025. I'm almost done writing it. It has to go to betas, and it has to go to, an editor. I am working on the book cover, so I will have a book cover reveal soon. If anybody wants to go to which again, it'll be April. But if anybody wants to go see the blurb reveal, I just did the blurb reveal and the trope reveal. So it's moving along.
Yeah. Oh, exciting stuff. I look forward to it. And then finally, I always like to just ask, do you have any advice for anyone who is looking to write their own stories, or maybe even relating to publishing, whatever speaks most to you?
Yeah, I love that question so much. It's very, very close to my heart. I give a free seminar twice a month to authors to become like on social media, because just sort of to help them become visible. And I try to do things like do it your way. Don't do it the way I'm doing it, because my way might not work for you. I can give you all of the tools, and you can mold it there. I have guest speakers the second seminar every single month. That makes sense. And then I do a tutorial on different things the first Wednesday of the first seminar of the month. They're both on Wednesdays. It's the second and the fourth.
Gotcha.
And just because it is a difficult industry. I think everything is really, really difficult, and it's harder than I ever thought hard could be, but too many people give up. So don't give up. Look for a different way, because there always is a different way. There's always a different way. And I've seen way too many people give up, and they didn't have to. Like they didn't. But it does beat people down a lot. For writing, I do an author spotlight once a week, and I give a list of 30 questions, and the authors always get to pick 5 to 7 out of them. And every single author either picks, what would you tell your younger self, or what do you wish you knew when you started writing? And they all say, don't give up. Start now and keep going, even when it gets difficult. And you can always pick back up again if, life happens. There's all kinds of stuff. But, just keep writing. Even if you think it's crap, who cares? I mean, I hate to say it so nonchalantly too, because I know that it's not. I've been there. I have anxiety. We talked about that, and it isn't always easy to stop the defeating voices in your head, but just keep going. I mean, the more you write, the better you get all the time. And, so that's really like, there's always a way, and, keep moving forward. Like mistakes aren't mistakes, they're life lessons. And, it's just, I can't talk about it enough. Just keep doing it. Even if you just do it for yourself for a short time, you know what I mean? Like it's if it's what you think you're meant to do, just keep writing.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. No, that's really good to hear. And I even love what you said a little bit earlier around kind of what works for me might not work for you. So it is kind of, you just have to try things out and figure out, and also listen to yourself, your gut, around what works best for you.
And it's a really difficult balance too, because you do have to sit still long enough to understand if it's a failure and if it's not. And the one thing that I've noticed just in my observations, I'm not trying to judge or anything like that, but people, do something for 3 or 4 days and they're like, well, this doesn't work.
Yes.
But that's not long enough.
Yeah.
It's just not long enough.
No, absolutely.
3 weeks, do something for 3 weeks. And then if it's not working, move on. So
fair. Yes. Stick with it. Yeah. I like that. I was starting to think about like, oh, what are all the things that I have started? And then it's just,
I did it too. You know what I mean? Like I've done it too. There's just a calm part of myself now that's like, if it doesn't work, it's okay. You can do something else.
Yeah.
So if I lose a subscriber, if I lose a follower, that's okay. They weren't my people. I want to talk to my people. So it's kind of that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Kara.
Yeah.
Do you want to let everyone know? Obviously, I'll have all the links in like the description, but what's the best way to maybe get in contact with you or the best places to follow you?
Thank you for asking that because I always forget to even talk about it. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I got you.
Thanks. I'm pretty much always on Instagram. So I am Kara M Zone _ rights. And anybody can DM me there. I respond as quickly as I possibly can. I hate notifications. It's a weird neurodivergent, like
Mhm.
crazy thing in my brain. So I'm always answering things. You can find me at my website, which is karamzone.com. And those are pretty much the two places that I really hang out. I do give a give a I don't know what to say. Like I'll do like if you want my novella, you can reach out to me. It's contact@karamzone.com. Or, I have at least one post a week where I'm like, hey, here's my newsletter, sign up.
Mhm.
And different things like that.
Awesome. Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for joining me, and I would absolutely love to have you back as we kind
Hey,
of continue the journey throughout the books and everything going on.
do you want the novellas? I can send them to you.
Absolutely, I
Okay.
would love them.
An accidental fairy tale is not available publicly anymore, but I'll
Gotcha.
hook you up.
Okay. Yeah. No, that would be great.
Thank you
Perfect.
so much.
If you've made it to this point in the episode, thank you so much for watching. I'd be incredibly grateful if you showed some support either by following or subscribing, depending on what platform you're watching on, and leaving a comment. You can always follow me on Instagram at Busy Reading Romantasy or on TikTok at busy_reading_romantasy to see what I'm up to. You can also email me at busyreadingromantasy@gmail.com to tell me your thoughts, dreams, secrets, or if you just have any book and author suggestions you'd love me to cover. Grab yourself a good book, get cozy. I'll see you next Wednesday for a new episode.